What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Recap. This week, however, is a little different. Obviously, the Gouldy 12 League is now finished for the year, but the Andy Dalton Fan Club does a 2-week final week, meaning that we're only halfway through the final. So, I've saved all of the results for the final game of the season, and they will be discussed next week in great depth. This week, we're going to be doing our award show for both the Andy Dalton Fan Club and the Gouldy 12 League. I've gone through, picked out some categories that might sound familiar. We're going to talk through them. We're going to talk about who my winners are and why. And we're also going to have the first ever Fantasy Football Hall of Fame player join. I debated doing this earlier in the year, and I think it's time. I went back through and looked at some of my teams since I started playing Fantasy Football, like 2017, 16 or 17. And I went through, looked at players who I've had a few times and have always done well for me and that I just like in general, and we're going to nominate some, and then one will be the first member of the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame. So let's get straight into it. First off, we have Coach of the Year award, we have a Most Improved award, we have a Wooden Spoon award, we have an MVP for a fantasy football player, so an actual NFL player who's performed very well in one of the two leagues. We have a matchup of the season in each league. We have a best individual draft decision. We have a best addition, be that via a trade or a waiver wire ad. And then we'll move on to the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame. So let's get started with the Coach of the Year. I looked at a couple of different metrics, but on the web page, you actually have a true breakdown of coaches. And what that takes into account is their overall record in the year, their overall wins versus losses with the players in their team. So every Kansas City player is like 14-1 or whatever it is, 15-1. So that would be 15-1, and then they all add up over the course of the season. So I looked at that as well, who picked players that won a lot of games. I looked at who the best coach is in the fantasy football terms of leaving points on your bench and making the right decisions. And I was thinking about using that metric as the main one, but I realised there are some people who were pretty high up on the points not left on the bench because they had a weak team and they didn't have many decisions to make. But I went through, I looked at it all, then there's the true value, and I didn't quite follow that, but I had a good look at it to see what I think. So, in the Andy Dalton Fan Club, the Coach of the Year is going to be James. He will be bitterly disappointed that he only made it to the semis before losing out. But having looked at what he's done this year, his team's done well. He made good moves. Overall, his players have won more games than they've lost. He's not really had many weeks where he's left points on the bench in silly ways. So he is absolutely the Coach of the Year this year for me. And then in the Gouldy 12 League, it is Josh. And no, it's not Crumb's Josh because he was dog shit this year. It's the other Josh. I looked at all of the stats. The only thing in which he was not the best in the league in was overall win-loss. And that is like his actual team. So he finished season 8-4, which is pretty common in our league. Most people were like, not 8-4, sorry, 8-5, 8-6, whatever it is. Most people were around that kind of landmark number. He was the exact same. But his team individual players won more games than anyone else. He left the fewest points on his bench. He made the best decisions. He has had a really good year. And again, he got pretty deep in the running while also being at the top of a lot of these stats, which is why I'm pretty confident giving him Coach of the Year. Most improved in the Andy Dalton Fan Club is going to be my father. He's only kind of got into football in like last 3, I think this might be 4 years now, and he's still learning a lot. And he had a really good year this year. He's making better decisions. He's gone from struggling to make the playoffs to he got all the way to the semi-final this year, which I'm sure he'll be very happy with. He's had a good season. He should be over the moon with his performance, and hopefully he can keep improving. Like I said, he went from like 8th last year to playoffs this year. Phenomenal improvement. And if he can keep going, he will be knocking on the door of championship soon. And then in the Gouldy 12 League, most improved is Oscar. I had a look at last year. Oscar finished like 9th or 10th. And then this year, it was looking shaky to start, but he really consolidated and ended up putting on a massive run to get all the way to the playoff semi-final. So he's had a really good year, especially when you look at where he was last year and even how he started this year. So I think that's definitely our best case for most improved. Everyone else kind of moved a little bit or plummeted down. So I think Oscar's the only real case for major improvement. The Wooden Spoon. This is a difficult one because in the Andy Dalton Fan Club, we have a few people who kind of just draft, set and forget, and it doesn't feel right giving them Wooden Spoon because they're not paying a lot of attention. So I thought I had to give it to someone who I know pays attention, remembers to check their team, remembers to update their team, but still just didn't perform that well. So this year, the Andy Dalton Fan Club Wooden Spoon goes to Anchor. 2-time winner, finalist on, I think, 4 occasions. Very, very, very good player. Not very good this year. She will be receiving the Wooden Spoon, I'm afraid. And then, in the Gooley 12 League, can we get a round of applause for Wag? He has had an absolute stinker of a year. He managed to win 2 games all year. Really, really bad. It was so bad. I don't know how he did it. Here's the good thing. It can only get better next year. I don't see him only managing to win 1 game next year. So surely it has to get better. He got 2 wins, maybe 3 wins this year. Surely he can get 3 or 4 next year. Surely that's the case. I'd hope so. Now, MVP. You'd think this could be the same player, but in the Andy Dalton Fan Club, we play a custom points set, whereas the Gouldy 12 League plays a standard point set. So I've got 2 different MVPs. The Andy Dalton Fan Club, I've chosen the MVP as Saquon Barkley. And the reason for that is he's the only running back in like the top 10, I think it was. Everyone else is a quarterback. I believe the top 10 point scorers over this season, 9 of them are quarterbacks. The other one is Saquon, and he's like 3rd behind Lamar and Josh Allen, I think it was. Incredible. You don't get more dynamite than that. He dropped to the 2nd round in our draft as well, so he was massive value. At number 1 overall, he would have been a great pick, but grabbing him in the 2nd round was an amazing decision by someone. Impressive. Now, moving over to the Gouldy 12 League, the MVP was a lot easier for me, as they were the only player in the Gouldy 12 League that broke 400 points this season so far, and that is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson managed 407 points, I think it was, in the Gouldy 12 League this year. Incredible. Like I said, only player that broke it. The next closest was like 390 something, so like a good 20 points difference. Lamar Jackson had a great year. It felt like every week he scored an insane amount of points. So yeah, ball out. I hope to see the Baltimore Ravens do pretty well in the playoffs, I've got to be honest. But yeah, very, very interesting. Now, these are the ones which were a bit more me decisions. So you're going to have to hang with me here. So our first game of the season, as you will be for the Andy Dalton Fan Club. And that is going to be the Dad versus Scott round 1 of the playoffs, so week 15 matchup. Let's look at this matchup and remind ourselves of how insane it was. And here we have it. It was 177.47 plays 177.53. There was 0.06 points difference in this. And that is even more insane because Zach Charbonnet had 14.75 points as the last player on the field with 10 minutes left in the 4th quarter. In our league, we play that every rush attempt is, I believe, a quarter of a point. So if he would have attempted to rush the ball once, even if he got 0 yards, he would have won the game. And that was with 10 minutes of game time left. But, I mean, just look at these scores. 41 points from Lamar Jackson, 33 from Jalen Hurts, 14 from Kamara, 20 from Williams, 34 from Evans, 10 from Chase, 6 from Kittle, 14 from Charbonnet, 8 from Lutz, 33 from the Broncos defense. And then the other side, obviously, 41 from Lamar, 5 from Montgomery, 23 from Dowdle, 40 points from Devontae Adams, 20 points from CD Lamb, 12 from Smith, Pollard chipping in with 12, Elliott with 10, and the Commanders with 13. 354 points scored in one weekend between these two teams. And the worst bit is, this isn't like a regular season game where you can just brush it off. This is a playoff game. This knocked Scott out of contention. Imagine scoring 177 points and then not getting to play the next week of the playoffs. You'd be livid. But that's exactly what happened. What an insane matchup this was. Like I said, I remember waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning when there was about 10 minutes left in the Seahawks game, seeing this scoreline and going, right, well, Dad's lost then because Charbonnet's definitely going to get one more touch in 10 minutes and win Scott the game. That's a shame. Oh well, went back to sleep, woke up in the morning and saw a message from my dad going, can you believe I won? And I'm like, what do you mean you won? Incredible stuff. One of the better matchups I think I've witnessed. Especially when you look at like some points on the bench could have like changed outcomes very easily. Like Taylor in for Kamara. or Charbonnet would have won the game. Any of these guys coming in, like Thomas coming in for Pollard with an extra 14 points. I mean, you got a bit unlucky with Montgomery getting hurt in that game. You could have had 17 points from Bucky Irving, which would have been another 12 there. Then Thomas comes in for another 14 there. That's another 26. He could have been on 203 points. Incredible game, incredible game. So that wins our matchup of the year. Congratulations to Scott and Dad, because that was an incredible one. And then in the Gooley 12 League, we have Cam versus Tony in week 6 of the regular season. Another incredibly close game. This was the game. 129.6 plays 129.02. But if you look, there's this little jump where he goes above Cam, and then it all goes wrong. And I believe that was his defense starting. Yes, I believe that was the case. I might be wrong, but I believe what happened was his defense started and they started on 10 points. Then it dropped down, got up, dropped down, and then right at the very end they got close, but they couldn't quite bring it back. Bearing in mind they didn't need to bring it back all the way either. Like I can't remember exactly what it was. One sack here would have won him the game. Incredibly close. Well, not quite as ridiculous as 170 apiece. But we do have some familiar faces. Lamar Jackson, Dowdle, believe. Oh, Seahawks running back, Kenneth Walker. It's just insane how close these games are. But it's funny because the points aren't like matched up in like the same areas too much. So Lamar actually loses out to Baker this week by 7 points. Running back room swings it back this way by about 7 points. Is that right? About 8 points, sorry. Then wide receivers got 38 here to 22. That's another 16 points this way. But then the home stretch really starts to change tight here. 9 points back here. 11 points. That's 20 points back over this side. 6 points back this way. 3 points back this way. It's just incredible stuff. Could we have done any better? I mean, if we'd have played Jordan Love, he would have won. But, I mean, this was bye-week hell. He only had 2 decisions to make. Jordan Love or Lamar Jackson, which is an obvious decision. And Jawan Jennings or Lad McConkey, which he made the right one. He made one wrong decision, and I don't think on paper it's a bad decision to play Lamar Jackson over Jordan Love. I think that's actually a very logical decision. Could he have won easier? He could have played Evan Ingram, who would have got him an extra 5 points and made it a bit more comfortable. Cortland Sutton could have come in for Amari Cooper for an extra 7 points and made it more comfortable. Caleb Williams, that was one of Caleb Williams' good weeks. So both of them, ironically, played the wrong quarterback. But again, on paper, you wouldn't say that that was the wrong quarterback decision. Because I know for a fact I'd rather, even right now, knowing the points, I'd take Baker Mayfield against New Orleans over Caleb Williams against the Jags. Another incredible matchup. I love how close some of these games get. Hopefully I'm not involved in any of them next year, and if I am involved in them, hopefully I'll come out on the winning side of them. But let's move on to the best draft picks. So I literally went back through on the website and I looked through each of the drafts to try and look for players who essentially like kind of got forgotten about or were picked up pretty late, maybe as a rookie or something. So this is what I decided. In the Andy Dalton fan club, I think one of the best decisions was made very, very late. I'm talking 122nd pick late. And I think it's a phenomenal decision. Here we have it. The draft pick of the year for me, Dad taking Brian Thomas Jr. at 122nd. He was taken at 122nd in the draft, and he finished the season, or is currently, wide receiver number 4 in fantasy football in our league. You don't get much better value than that. Incredible pick. He will be over the moon with that. Brian Thomas Jr. had a great year. I'm so impressed with him for a rookie season. I hope he has a very long, successful career in the NFL because he's been electric to watch. And I did manage to eventually pick him up in the Gouldy 12 League, and he's worked very hard for me over there as well. But this pick is incredible. Also, shout out to Jordan Addison, 121. That is a very good pick. He finished at like wide receiver 20, but that is incredible. But let's go ahead and have a look at the decision in the Gouldy 12 League. Now, this might be the most insane. I was looking through trying to see any insane picks, and then I stumbled across this, and I cannot believe it. Incredible. This is pick 161 of the Gouldy 12 League. They were the 21st quarterback taken, and they finished at quarterback 5. It is, of course, Baker Mayfield. What a year he's had. I would argue it's an MVP caliber year. He's had a phenomenal year. The fact that he isn't like in the discussion is actually a little bit rude in my opinion. He's had a great year. He's been cooking. The Bake Show's been in full effect. I actually ended up picking him up off waivers in the other league. Very, very happy with that decision. He just keeps slinging it. But to pick him up at 161, he's the 21st quarterback taken. That means of the 12 teams, this was the third to last backup taken in that logic, and he's ended up finishing quarterback number 5. That's an insane pick from Cam. I know Baker stayed on Cam's team the entire way because he's cooked since day one. Great decision. He has been phenomenal. I can't believe the second to last round, and you managed to net the quarterback who ends up being quarterback number 5 on the year. Incredible stuff from Cam. He's got to be over the moon with that decision. And now we move on to the best additions. Now, this was supposed to be best via trade or best via waiver wire. They both, in my opinion, end up being waiver wire picks. And ironically, it's actually the same player in both leagues. So, in the Andy Dalton fan club, Dad picked this player up in week 5. And then in the Gouldy 12 league, Mick picked up this player in week 4. This player has had an insane season. I believe they're the only player ever, I might be wrong on that though, to break 1,000 scrimmage yards while playing less than 50% of the snaps in a given season. It's Bucky Irving. And bearing in mind, like I feel like I only noticed Bucky Irving was breaking out in like week 8 or 9, and they had him in week 4 and 5. They were like, grab that. Rashad White to me was like a no-brain must pick up. If you can get him as your running back to your flex, was going to be a good player to have this year. And they've gone now. Bucky Irving's going to be the dude. They've picked him up, and he's carried Mick all the way to a final. I won't say who won. And took Dad all the way to a semi-final. Incredible. Bucky Irving has been phenomenal this year. He's definitely one to watch next year. And then both picking him up so early, I think, is no small indicator of how they ended up doing so well. Normally, I take great pride in being on it on waiver wires and grabbing great players. This year, I've not had an amazing pool that I'm over the moon with. Bucky Irving is a great grab, and they should both be very proud of themselves. Right, and now we have the first ever nominations for my Fantasy Football Hall of Fame. This will be the introductory class. We've got 4 nominees, but only one will be joining or starting the Hall of Fame today. I went back through and looked through all of my Andy Dalton fan club teams. I also looked at my 3 Gourley 12 teams. And a couple of names kept popping up, and I remembered them and have a lot of love for them. Most of these people I've had for multiple seasons or on multiple teams. Or they were just electric, and I grabbed them at the right time. So, Chris Godwin. I believe I've had on 4 different rosters across the 2 leagues, and he has always done well for me. Cordero Patterson. Cordero Patterson is one of my favourite ads I ever made. Remember 3 years ago it might have been now, when he was on the Falcons, and he just went sicko mode and just scored so many points constantly for like the entire season. I picked him up in week 2. After an insane week 1, I grabbed him. I was like, this guy ain't slowing down. I managed to pick him up. I had him for the entire season. He was phenomenal. And he will always hold a special place in my heart for that. Even now when I see him on different teams and he's doing bits, I always hope to see him do well. So I've got a lot of love for Cordero Patterson. And this is a funny one. This is a bit of a throwback. Drew Brees was my quarterback for my first 3 seasons in the league. In the Andy Dalton fan club, I had Drew Brees for the first 3 years. That's incredible. A lot of love for Drew Brees. He was very reliable. I'll give him that. It feels like we don't get as reliable quarterbacks anymore. You either get really good like Lamar Jackson, Baker this year, Josh Allen, or you get like Kirk Cousins. Drew Brees was phenomenal. A lot of love for him. And then our nomination from this year, because I love him and he's got me out of so many situations, is Bijan Robinson. I have him in both the Gourley 12 and the Andy Dalton Fan Club League. And he is phenomenal. I love him a lot. I want him again in the future. But I couldn't not nominate him when he's been such a big part of the success of getting so close to the playoffs and also all the way to a final. But there is only room for one of them this year. And for me, it has to be Chris Godwin. I love Chris Godwin. When I found out he was on injured reserve, literally missed out on players on waivers to make sure that it updated him to being on IR so I could put him in my reserve slot so that he was on the roster if we made the playoffs and then however far we got. Which means even right now, at the midway point of the final, he is still on the roster. Yeah, he's in the reserve slot, but Chris Godwin gets a ring if I get a ring, you know? Lot of love for Chris Godwin. He's been great every time I've had him. And I'm when I saw him pop up 3, 4, 5 times, I was like, he's got to be the first name in there. So Chris Godwin has now started the official Fantasy Football Hall of Fame. Thank you so much for watching. Next week we'll go through the finals and all the consolation bracket games. It's been an amazing football season, and I'll see you there.